US and Europe and everybody was giving us a very good example of what democracy,
that's a very diplomatic answer.
Democracy is.
They have been giving you that example
is good
for
about,
over a century, for God's sake.
But don't forget, they were also giving us the example of what democracy is bad about. Because
that's an unusual answer.
Well,
what is democracy bad about?
Without attacking anybody, that there are things that you cannot do through democracy, then you have to find other ways to do them. Another country to do it on your behalf, or something of the kind. We did not need lessons from anybody, but we took the example as a good thing. We followed our own will of not accepting what
But don't you think it's a little bizarre that a country that promotes democracy, and quite frankly, they do a fabulous job, the US, for instance,
yes,
that they would give a dictator, Hosni Mubarak, 30 years of unconditional aid, second largest recipient after the Israeli war. You know what I mean?
Well,
bizarre, isn't it?
It's
and then they take credit for it.
It's something to say that there is no an ultimate defender of democracy in the world. Doesn't exist.
There are no ultimates in the world to begin with.
And the only ultimate thing I would say, and then we have no ultimate friend or ultimate enemy, but we have ultimate interests. And the interests of the countries are the ones that guide every country in its foreign policy. Would it be in the interest of the US, for instance, to change a stable regime in Egypt into an unknown regime? Would they opt for that just for the sake of democracy? It would have been lovely, but they don't. Would any other country do so?
If we look at different examples, if we look at the Philippines, if we look at Marcos, whatever, we know that in terms of a superpower, every superpower, not just the US, you make sure that you are covered from every angle.
Yes, but if you look to the Philippines and others, where are the American relations with them now? Are very fine.
What happened with Iran?
What happened with Iran is a different thing. That's the Iranians, but not ask me. What is important here is that there is ultimate interests. And where the interest lies, the foreign policy guides. So if they have decided...
So this was an unexpected revolution.
I think that this is a spontaneous Egyptian fed-up revolution.
Okay, let's move on. What I really want to get to is what happened in Libya, for instance.
Yes.
When we look at images in Pakistan of Gaddafi being pulled out, being shot, being manhandled, there's a certain sentiment that makes us say, oh my goodness, you know what, the NATO and the other forces, they must have propelled this revolution. We forget, and we are perhaps not aware of what actually was happening there. What actually happened there?
Well, not to speak on behalf of the Libyans, but violence breeds violence. And if you start with violence, you will end up with violence. And the good thing, if you compare Libya with Egypt, is that the regime has immediately stopped violence against the population in Egypt, while Gaddafi had decided to go violent against his people and even attacking his own population.
The reason I'm mentioning this is because Gaddafi has a specific hold over Pakistani sentiment. We have a stadium in Lahore named after Gaddafi.
Yes.
In terms of the regime of former Prime Minister Zulfikar Bhutto, when we developed our nuclear assets, Gaddafi actually was somebody who contributed, not just monetarily, but in terms of intelligence and otherwise. So the sentiment over here is a little overwhelming. And we want to understand what happened for it to come to this.
Well, the Pakistani
Should we have empathy, sympathy?
No. The Pakistani sentiment is very justified. And not only Pakistan. Many African nations had this. And I think all nations of the world recall, and we had this the same with Hosni Mubarak. Every leader had his goods and his bads.
Right.
But the good thing he should have done is to leave on time. But he didn't leave on time. This is the only good thing he missed, but he had definitely, Gaddafi should have had good things for the Libyans and less good things. Mubarak had very good things in Egypt. If you recall, when he steps down, he reminded the Egyptian population of his history, of what he has done all his life as a soldier in the service of the country. And we all has recognized that. Nobody denies the good things one does. No Pakistani should deny any good thing any other country has done or any other leader has done. But this doesn't mean that the Libyans have to continue because of a good thing he did, that they continue with the bad things.
Yeah, but I believe $1.5 billion in frozen assets, for God's sake. It's an oil-rich country.
Yes.
Your people are living below the poverty line, the majority of them. What is going on?
The question, and the important one, is what is going on to happen now with these frozen assets?
That's a good question.
What is going to happen to the money?
Well, the money is
where
just going to
go? Money go?
It's not going to go back to Libya.
Why?
It never does.
But I think we should expect the international community to join hands in helping every country that was stolen, robbed.
Do you really expect that?
Do you know what happens in internal law when you just know about a crime and you don't report or you don't stop it? You're accomplice of it. So I think that every country should report any crime that comes to its knowledge, including money laundering, including stealing the food and the money of every population.
What happened to Gaddafi? What was the build-up there?
Well, what happened to Gaddafi? Just speaking.
He hired militias.
Lightly,
He did.
We understand
from African countries and other countries. He hired militias to come and kill his own people.
He was forcing his stay by the military means against the will of the people. He was not sure that there was a majority against him. Perhaps, I don't know, but obviously he was using foreign power to try to oppress his people. So should we accept that or not accept that is not our issue. The issue is, would the Libyans themselves accept that or not? And the Libyans,
they clearly didn't.
And the Libyans obviously didn't, and fought a long days of war with I think 40,000 victims. This is enormous. We are victims of what happened in Libya. Don't forget that as well. We have had about 1 million Egyptians who had to flee out Libya because of the combats and the killings. We were personally sometimes mentioned in the conflict in Libya, and we wanted to prove ever since the beginning that the Egyptians had nothing to do, and it's only a matter of Libyans and Libyans. We are not part of the conflict, and we will not be part of the conflict.
Well,
but we can be part of the solution.
Well, we'll come to the solution.
Yes.
But part of the conspiracy theory, whatever you want to call it, is that this change would not have occurred in Libya if it wasn't propelled, again, by certain external forces that actually wanted to get to Libya because it's an oil-rich country.
So you want to blame the NATO forces or the French and the British and the Italians and the Americans perhaps and everybody for helping the Libyans to get their freedom?
Well, I have another question.
Yes.
Why is it that so far the U.S. has not intervened in Sudan?
In Sudan?
Sudan, yeah.
What's going on in Sudan?
There was civil war going on in Sudan.
Yes.
We've seen the images of Darfur. We have seen people in the U.S. actually come out.
But they have
because
intervened.
China has an interest.
They have intervened and they followed, but I'm not defending the U.S. because we were also intervening and we were trying to bring the Sudanese parties, all of them, to reason, and they have sat on the table. There were more than a single trial, and we are part of the UNMISS, United Nations mission in Sudan, and we are part of all the missions to try to bring stability and culmination of the situation. The Sudanese issue is a very complicated issue. It's a tribal, and at the same time, it's going over the borders issue. And I don't think there is a single country who didn't try to intervene to help and solve this problem. But what we have now, we have two Sudans. This is the outcome of the start of the...
Right. You actually believe that the U.S. actually intervened in the correct manner, at a timely manner?
Listen, the correct manner or the false manner, this is the generations of Sudan have to judge in the future. What they had and what they will have. Every country try to do what it sees best from its point of view.
National interest.
National interest and regional interest.
So when
and
China is the
interest.
biggest buyer of U.S. debt, and when China has a huge presence in Sudan, the U.S. does not intervene. It's very simple. Let's move to the solution. Solution in Libya. You said that Egypt wants to be a part of the solution.
Yes.
What is the solution?
It's very clear. It's a democracy. It's the build up of the institutions, the rebuild up of the economy, and the making of Libya what it deserves to be, a developed nation which is already a very rich nation, so it can be easily and fastly developed without an economic crisis. And
Iraq is an oil-rich nation.
Yes.
It hasn't been able to build up.
Because?
Of various reasons that you and I both know.
They have divided the country, and the Iraqis are fighting against each other. This is exactly...
But that was expected.
Yes, expected, but
historically
not wished for.
And otherwise.
But not wished for. But if we continue like this, we will divide every country in the world. We, the whole international community, we didn't wish to see that happening. Who wanted, or at least the Arab world didn't wish to see any division between the people. You know what's the problem of nowadays?
I want to know, what is the Arab sentiment?
The problem of nowadays is that we had in our region a population that was living in peace together. And it started somewhere in Africa, in Burundi and Rwanda, and then somewhere in the Balkans, in Bosnia, Croatia, and actually the former Yugoslav republics. And there was this difference and division upon ethnicities. And I think this is the major danger that's coming now. Because if you divide every country and say they are not one fabric, they are Christians and Muslims and Serbs and Croats and Orthodox and Catholics, this is the start of a destabilizing of a region.
Well, then in that case, Pakistan is the prime example, because there are Punjabis and Sindhis and Balochis and Pakhtuns.
Do not follow this. Stay with your own fabric of the society and do not amplify the differences, because this is the start of a destabilization of the country. We have seen trials, many trials in Egypt, that they have never been successful. We have seen in other regions of the world where they were very successful, in the Balkans and in Africa. We should not, because you do not imagine how much these humans have gone over the top in being inhuman in treating the others in their conflicts. I've witnessed what happened in Burundi, and I've witnessed what happened in the Balkans. And I would tell you, this is not, if you see the end game, you would really feel sorry to go the whole way. And definitely, you have to maintain the stability and the single fabric of every society.
But how do you maintain the stability? I mean, this is a little off track. How do you maintain the stability of a nation when the leadership of the nation does not realize that the actual sovereignty and keeping the fabric of society together is the most important thing?
The leadership of the nation should abide by the will of the nation. And the leadership of the nation is not the leadership that tells the nation what it should do, but what the nation tells the leadership to do. This is democracy. And since you are ahead in democracy than we are,
we've had our ups and downs.
You should be leading our way towards that.